hello again to another Agakala React, and today we have another day for you, Eric. Yay! Okay, we should just make the... Oh. Yeah, we figured it out.
Yes.
Maybe for the next.
It's our secret high five.
Secret on the video. So, well,
now you want to know?
You're like, oh, yeah, open the door.
No?
No. So Millie is with us today. As Millie being Millie, she's just demanding of our time. You gonna say hi? No? Okay. Alright, what are you watching?
We are watching Anime's Obsession with Europe, A Brief History by The Soak.
I don't think I ever seen anything from that channel. I'm not sure.
Anime.
I'm watching that.
Cool.
No, it started.
In 1974, a show called Heidi, Girl of the Alps aired on televisions worldwide, creating an instant global sensation. Still seen as a masterpiece today, the show told the story of a young girl named Heidi, who is sent to live with her grandfather in the Swiss Alps. Here, she gets up to all kinds of adventures with Peter the goatherd, her dog Joseph, and her rich friend Clara, all while squirming her way into the heart of her grumpy old grandfather, and in turn, us, the viewing audience. If you're old enough but not familiar with the show, you probably live in either the UK or the US, two of the few places that the show didn't catch on. But across Europe, the Middle East, South America, South Africa, and Asia, this show was a huge hit. As someone who grew up in India before moving to the UK, I have incredibly fond memories of watching this show even in the 90s. And my family still nostalgizes about the days that I watched innocent shows about little farmer girls and not violent anime featuring gratuitously big booby ladies. What neither they, nor I, nor most of the viewing world
I remember that character.
was that this was an anime, one of the first truly global anime.
The blonde girl in the Alps thing. I remember watching it when I was really young.
Miyazaki would go on to create an animation house by the name of Studio Ghibli. The creators were in fact so keen on telling this story authentically that Miyazaki himself went on a scouting mission to Switzerland and throughout Europe to make sure they depicted the environment and characters as accurately as possible.
ところがいわゆる場面設計をやった宮崎駿はですね、ただ見て回ってるんですよね。景色なり、着ている服なり、建物なり、食器なり、ただ見てる。それを彼は一生懸命記憶してハンティング取り入れた。
But why was this 1970s anime made in Japan so keen on retelling an old Swiss children's novel? I mean, the original story is from the 1800s. And why do so many anime from then till now, and especially now,
Sorry guys, have to let Millie out.
Hey, Attack on Titan.
Alright, thank you. Awesome. We are both fans of anime, so...
Yeah, good stuff.
She's gone? She's gone. She's gonna be back in a moment. Cuts for you.
I used to watch it as a teenager.
Vinland Saga and
Gundam.
Frieren all
Gundam?
seem to have
Good
such a
stuff.
fascination with Europe. I mean, it's not like in the West, we make loads and loads of shows set in Japan. Only the odd film or TV show here and there, and they're almost
This is
never
also
based
doing
on
that as well.
retelling authentic Japanese literature.
I mean,
or folklore.
the Shogun,
Usually,
I
they're
don't know
just
about the last
white guy
samurai.
ends up in Japan
That's good.
stories.
Yeah.
But in anime, Europe or fictional places that are substitutes for Europe are such a common
Yeah,
setting
she was-
that you
she
probably
was in the
didn't even
wheelchair
think
as well,
about
she
how
couldn't walk.
normalized that is
Yeah, definitely
until I
seen it
just
as a
said it.
kid.
So what's
I
going
wouldn't mind
on?
watching this
Where
one.
did anime's fascination and maybe obsession with Europe come from? Well, I'm about to tell you, but it's a bit of a long story, so settle in.
Let me tell you
It
how.
kind of goes on like what's the word? Reciprocated? Because people in the West are absolutely fascinated with Japan. Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe it's kind
Some
of
people,
similar
not
too.
everybody.
Yeah. Oops, forgot to play it. So I don't know. Let me see what else we have to say about European by being Europe. Because it's actually, yeah, it's West, but it's not just West, but it's Europe. He specifically said Europe. And actually, I didn't know that there's a lot of anime that's kind of like happening in Europe. So,
Yeah.
nothing comes to mind right now, but you know, I can't really. Although, the only one that comes to my mind is Castlevania, but that's based on the games and it's different thing. But it's made in Japan as well, isn't it?
I wish they showed Castlevania, the animated series, in the cinema.
Oh, yeah, like a special thing.
Yeah, that would be so awesome. Especially if we had to pay for it. I'd go see it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we would. I really enjoyed Castlevania.
Was it 10 episodes? Were there 22 minutes each? So,
No, I think they were a bit longer.
you could play a whole season in one go.
But there was like 3 seasons of it.
Yeah, I mean, probably one per week.
Well, yes. I'm just trying to think what else did we watch. The recent one that we watched on Netflix, Delicious in Dungeon.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that was kind of
funny.
like it could have been in Europe as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. It was very good.
I always see this ad for this game.
Yeah, I keep getting them all the time. Hero Wars.
But apparently, it's not like what you see.
It isn't. Like most of the ads for those games is just kind of. It's probably just like a small. How do you say it? Small little thing after several levels. You just have to like build up and. I don't know how to explain it. I think I actually played it like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure because it was something similar. That it just the ad really got me interested, but when I started playing it was nothing like it.
That's interesting.
You should really have something written not part of the regular gameplay.
Yeah, just to sucker you in.
And obviously they ask you to spend money and things like that too, so you know.
Yeah.
Because if that would be the game, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But it isn't.
Hero Wars. I'm a real legend. Sure.
Nowadays, when we think of weebs in the West obsessing with Japanese culture and fetishizing the allure of Japan, we often make the mistake of assuming that it's a one-way street. But Japan itself has long been fascinated with Europe too, in its own way. Before we talk about anime, we need to talk through some important historical context. For those who aren't aware, Japan went through a period of isolation from the rest of the world called Sakoku, which means closed country, and it lasted over 200 years. During this time, which spanned from the early 1600s till the 1850s, Japan didn't allow any Europeans, or generally foreigners, to enter the country except for some limited trade with China and Korea and one singular Dutch trading post in Nagasaki. While this was a time of great cultural growth for Japan, Sakoku ended in 1853 when the US arrived with warships and demanded that Japan open its borders and then forced them to sign the hilarious...
This is interesting. It's always the US.
They like causing trouble. What can I say?
They do, don't they?
Yeah, they cause a lot of crap.
They demanded, so Japan had to open their thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Despite being like that for 200 years.
yeah, I mean, they start stuff and people say, "Oh, we're the victim," when they fight back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really an anime story; it's more of a political story.
The treaty between the United States and the Empire of Japan, 1854.
After this time, though, in what is known as the Meiji period, Japan once again opened its borders and set about to furiously catch pace with the rest of the world, having realized just how far they had fallen behind the Western powers. With this came an influx of technology, literature, and science into Japan, particularly that from Europe. European fashion became trendy, and European culture became a point of fascination. It is in this context that a lot of Japan's prominent media developed, particularly its films, and eventually comic books, or mangas. An easy mistake to make would be to assume that the Second World War is the cause of anime's fascination with Europe. But no evidence from any of the literature I read, and I've been researching this topic for like 2 months now, backed up that idea.
How do you know
It is
that?
an obvious conclusion to draw that Japan being
How do you know
allied
the show?
with Germany
Yeah.
would somehow make it fascinated with German culture. But if you stop to
Isn't
think
this one
about
with
it
the
just
door
a little
and the
bit,
guy-
you'll understand why.
Oh,
it's not
yeah,
true.
yeah,
Germany
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
suddenly become fascinated with Japan after the World War. Why would it? The alliance was purely militaristic. There was no exchange of cultural ideas, and there was no time for it. There was a global conflict going on. Living in the UK, we didn't suddenly become a lot more interested in France's culture, thank God, just because we were allied in the war, nor Russia. Instead, Japanese film and media developed itself during and after the war, with animated cartoon films being used for war propaganda and also for entertainment. They were massively influenced by works from all over Europe, particularly France and Russia, but had its own style and Japanese grounding and influences too. The medium slowly evolved into the styles and aesthetics that resemble what we would now recognize as being anime. Eventually, they became a commercial product,
That's
with
a
manga
newer
being
one, though.
purchased by thousands of people.
Yeah, it's
and
like
with television, those stories
one from the
began
90s.
being
Even you know
converted.
that.
Yeah!
When the boom
Right after Gundam came Sailor Moon, so
Mm.
I watched it. It was on
Well, Sailor
Toonami.
Moon was everywhere.
Yeah, it was on Toonami.
No, I mean like it was played in normal regular television in Poland.
Yeah.
In like a afternoon after school, so everyone was watching it. You literally were going back out of school and like maybe an hour later or something like that. Sailor Moon was on the TV, and it was one of the national TVs. One that everyone had access to. You know, free access, so everyone
Yeah.
could watch it. So everyone was watching it because it just basically it was a perfect thing.
came
Slot.
through in the 1960s.
And before
and beyond.
Gundam, there was Bananas in Pajamas that I watched.
Say what? No.
Bananas in Pajamas, walking down the stairs. You ever seen it? They remade that one too. It's cool. It's like two bananas in pajamas, and they talk. It's a kid's show.
Oh, okay.
And then Toonami came on. He played Gundam, Sailor Moon, and that was it. Just an hour. Then my stepmother came, kicked me out. Hey, go to your room. Okay.
The 60s was when anime started to find
You had to
more
watch Oprah.
commercial success both in Japan and abroad in the US and Europe. First with Astro Boy, which was the first anime film to be released in the US, and later in the 1970s with Space Battleship Yamato. Here's where we start to see the establishment of a certain trope that would follow in a lot of anime thereafter: the adventures of young male protagonists in conflict-oriented worlds, which we now see as a staple in shonen anime like Naruto, One Piece, or My Hero Academia. But it's actually shoujo anime where our interests lie, stories about young women targeted at a young female audience. While young boys enjoyed space operas about intergalactic war, young
Was that Grease?
Yeah. So when did you watch that anime first time? Do you remember?
When I watched first anime,
How old were you?
I was a teenager.
Oh, it's late.
Yeah, because you buy VHS tapes at the video store, you'll see a section for it. So I'd watch Angel Cop, which was, I thought it was awesome. You see heads being blown off and everything.
I think I made a reaction about it, and that was banned in many places because of the violence of it. And
You can watch Angel Cop on YouTube for free.
yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, but basically they were saying that, and I think in America that was the only way you could watch it on the VHS. There was no way that any TV would show it. I think so, because it was some time ago, but
Yeah. But they did a rating system. Say this is not for kids on the anime section. So I watched Vampire Hunter D, Curse of Undead Yama. Those are all really good. And then I got into one called Dragon Knight, which looked pretty cool. Ended up being not for kids, folks.
what is it?
Dragon Knight.
Oh.
It's a fantasy anime, but they had a lot of sex in it. So I was like, okay, I'm a teenager going, oh. Interesting.
Nothing in TV.
No, just censored stuff. If you want it uncensored, you buy the VHS tapes.
Well, no, I mean like anime in general. Did you watch anything when you were a kid just on TV?
No,
No, there was nothing shown on TV.
there was animation. There was Mickey, Disney.
Well, not anime.
Not anime, no.
Ah,
But one I recommend I still watch today. It's funny. It's extremely funny. It's called The Slayers. Luna Inverse, she's a magician. And you have Gower, the knight. And they go on adventures. But it's freaking funny. Oh my gosh.
watching that now without me?
Not watching it now. I watched it back in the 90s.
Oh.
But they have quite a few I haven't seen. I saw the first season, part of the second, and then I stopped. But it's on my list of things to watch. The newer ones are kind of annoying because they have some certain characters that have a voice that just annoy me. And they have games, one for the Super NES and two for the Sega Saturn. but they're in Japanese. So if you want to play them, I recommend find a hack that has the English translation or learn Japanese.
Just like you.
Yeah, I would recommend learning Japanese because it's something I wanted to do as a kid, to play Japanese games, because if you get the American version, which costs $120, the Japanese version $1. So not only do you have a language
That was
skill,
your way to actually learn. You should have just get the game for $1 and just learn, especially that your stepmother spoke Japanese.
Yes.
So you could easily learn.
Yes. Do you see all those crates? Those are
Yeah.
Japanese games.
So you're still not playing them.
Yes. Do I know Japanese, folks? No. I know haiku. I was told that a lot.
So see, if you'd be playing those games when you booked them and stuff like that, you probably already think, because a lot of language comes from just putting them together when you're learning like that.
I know, start, continue, save.
But not even
delete.
like when there would be like some kind of words and stuff like that. I guess the Japanese would be kind of more complicated though.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about my own experience learning English, so at least we're using the same alphabet, so
Yeah.
it's a different story. Okay, let's go back.
More interested in stories about people, everyday interactions of love, jealousy, and friendship. And this is where Europe comes into the picture. Since the beginning of the Meiji period that I spoke about earlier, young women in Japan were already fascinated with European fashion and aesthetics, and early shoujo anime reflected this, the large number of them taking place in European settings. But one fascinating and surprising reason why early shoujo anime set their stories in Europe was that it allowed them to explore otherwise forbidden themes, such as homosexual love and female empowerment. As legendary critic Frederick Schott writes, foreign settings create an exotic quality, with storybook scenes and fashions, and allow heroes and heroines to act in ways that are not always socially possible in Japan. A notable example of this was The Rose of Versailles, a manga which eventually got turned into an anime and is set in the French royal court, just before and during the French Revolution. Initially, the show follows the biographical story of Marie Antoinette, the last Queen of France, but soon pivots to the real main and fictional character of Oscar Francois de Jager. And this is the point I would acknowledge that I'm pronouncing words in like 4 different languages, so please forgive me if any of my pronunciations are way off. Oscar is a young woman who was raised as a boy and a soldier by her father who longed for a male heir. Oscar becomes captain of the Queen's Guard, and although she openly identifies as a woman, her masculine demeanor and androgynous aesthetic create for various gender-defying and homoerotic subplots. Oscar's first romantic intertwining, for example, is with a female character named Rosalie, who falls for Oscar after she saves her life multiple times. But Oscar rejects Rosalie's advances, stating that she wanted to be in a relationship with a man, not a woman. In shoujo anime, it was very common to explore such romantic interests between women, so much so that it had its own term, Class S relationships. These were not usually sexual in their nature, but still romantic friendships between women with intensely strong emotional bonds or admiration for one another. After this failed situationship, Oscar then encounters 2 different male suitors, one who sees her only as a man and one who sees her only as a woman, both of which prove exceedingly frustrating to Oscar, who wants to be recognized for her whole self. Eventually, Oscar falls in love with her lifelong sidekick, Andre, who is himself an androgynous figure, and by the end of the story, cuts his hair to look similar to Oscar's, and indeed, by the end of the show, they look very much alike. Oscar even describes Andre as her shadow, and the fact that they're both basically the same person is again a nod to the homoerotic elements which were a normal part of the genre. It was this ability to play with the dynamics of sex and gender which made shoujo anime so popular with Japanese girls at the time, who were able to project themselves into situations they otherwise wouldn't be in. Male homosexual love, for example, was fairly common in shoujo anime because the idea of men having sex was considered a lot more normal than thinking about the sexuality of women. On top of that, The Rose of Versailles was also politically very bold and inspiring, with the main character Oscar becoming so disillusioned with the corruption of the French aristocracy that she joins the Republican rebels and fights to overthrow the monarchy, eventually dying in battle for the cause. These progressive and transgressive messages made The Rose of Versailles so popular at the time that according to critic Deborah Shamoun, when the main character Oscar died, teachers reportedly were forced to suspend classes because all the girl students were in tears. And one angry fan actually mailed a letter containing a razor to the artist who wrote the manga, Ikeda Ryoko. So we see here that early on in anime, Europe represented a foreign
Eric and his weird sense of humor.
Take a hint, buddy.
While still
Your anime
speaking
sucks.
very much directly to Japanese audiences. This is a theme that would continue on in the 70s as we approach the era of Miyazaki. In the 1970s, a new type of anime subgenre.
In less than 60 seconds,
Hello Fresh.
Yeah, oh, fresh too.
So you're talking about anime. Which anime did you enjoy most from your life?
There's too much to choose from. Like, I definitely, when I was a kid, I watched Sailor Moon a lot. And like now here, just doing that, the Heidi and something that I didn't even realize that was anime, but I remember watching it as like a small kid. So obviously, I've probably seen other things that I didn't even realize they were anime. Because to me, cartoons are just cartoons back then, you know.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't be that this distinction between anime and cartoons and stuff like that.
Well, it's animation.
But, yeah. Well, yes, it's a type of animation, but I'm just saying like all of them would be the same.
Yeah.
There was one when I don't know what the title was. I can't remember, and I can't just because the premise is very similar to a lot. I probably would, if I really look into it, I would find it, the title and stuff like that. I remember years ago, I was still living in Poland, there was a channel that basically during the day they were showing cartoons for kids, like normal cartoons, but on the evening they would be focusing on like games, and then at 10 o'clock in the evening they were showing anime. And they were showing this one that basically was a story about a girl from our world. Mind, I was a teenager back then too, yeah? So a girl from our world, she got transported in somewhere, I don't remember exactly how, to different world. And then they have, what they call them now? They were like, that second world was like, when the nights existed and stuff, it was kind of, it wasn't like a now, it's just like in past, our past or something. It wasn't our past, but there basically was different world that the world was living like it would be not our past when the nights were still a thing and whatever. But the only distinction was that they were knights, but they had those mecha knights. You know what I mean? Gundam?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah.
And
Well, I guess it's a type of mech.
yeah, isn't it? Yeah. I can't remember
I'd
the
say
title.
mechs
yeah.
are more of a
Yeah, but
land-based.
basically they had those massive structures like in Pacific Rim or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
giant robots.
Giant robots, but they were getting inside, and there were those knights were fighting with those giant robots, and there was obviously something. But that was years ago as well. And I'm still remembering that, so this is how much impact that put on. And then there was obviously the wolves. I can't remember the title. I'm terrible with titles. That was actually watched that one when I moved to Ireland, and there was a one kind of like an anime specific channel on Skype here, and they were showing that one. And I just remember the songs from it. One of the singers that have few songs in Cowboy Bebop. I actually forgot. How can I forget about Cowboy Bebop? Gee, yeah, definitely Cowboy Bebop, but the other ones that they are in Cowboy Bebop, yeah, that one too as well. It was about people that they were changing into wolves. I don't know, the story it wasn't really werewolf-like, but it was just kind of different. I don't remember much of it, but I remember the songs. It's just like thing, and obviously Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah,
for sure, my favorite one.
I'd say Ghost in the Shell. 1995 had the biggest impact on me.
I'm terrible because I just didn't even think about it.
Yeah,
It's something that you shouldn't really mention.
it's not like
I
the
mean,
Ghost in
like
the Shell on Netflix. That's completely different than the 1995
Yeah,
version. I'd
It's
say
something. Yeah, I watched it too in the same one that Cowboy Bebop, and the one that I was telling you about, the one that they were showing anime at 10 o'clock. This is how I watched Cowboy Bebop. That's how I watched Ghost in the Shell. They were different ones, but they were basically showing episode by episode every night.
oh,
and then
Ghost
they
in
were
the Shell was just a
changing.
movie.
Yeah, but they were showing that sometimes too in parts of Pink.
Oh yeah.
Or I watched something somewhere. I
Like
definitely
miniseries.
watched Ghost in the Shell before. And Ghost in the Shell is definitely up my alley because I love science fiction.
Yeah, and the
So-
second one they did, Innocence, that was Ghost in the Shell Innocence, that was amazing as well. It's when they got to the series, Standalone Complex, The Laughing Man.
I think I watched the standalone complex there on
Yeah.
that. That's why it was on that.
Those were just okay,
Yeah, but I still enjoyed
and
it.
then Arise was good. and the movie was And then they made a anime series again, another movie, which I still haven't seen animated. It was the new version of it. And then the stuff on Netflix now, that's Ghost in the Shell. That's like, okay, laughable, but you know, I'd watch
the
it.
Graphic, the
animation,
style of
yeah,
animation.
the CG animation was just not for me. I prefer hand drawn.
They're not really hand drawn anymore either, but they look like they're hand drawn.
One I'm trying to get her to watch is called Berserk, with Guts. The guy with the giant sword. Oh my gosh, it came out in the late 90s. Like 26 episodes. And that anime is awesome. I mean, Jesus Christ. It's bloody. I love bloody. But
Yeah, he likes gore.
it's amazing. You can watch a shorter version of it, reanimated on CG. It was the Golden Egg or something. But there's 3 parts to it that narrows down the entire series in like a newer format. And then they have a 2016 version series and 2017 series, which I haven't watched yet. I have to resubscribe to Crunchyroll.
Well, Attack on Titan was good too.
Yeah, and I gotta finish Initial D. It's a race scene. It's about a race scene.
Yeah, it looks weird. The style of that I find it weird, like really, really old-fashioned.
It's based off a manga.
Yeah, but it's just the kind of like how they look. I haven't watched many of it. It's just sometimes I watch the original.
I've never read the manga, and I've never seen the series, but I am familiar with the games. Because Initial D in the arcades was the racing game to play. That game it's amazing. I mean, I think it was arcade stage, and I would spend so much money going to the arcade playing that one game. I wish I had it at home. You get the home versions, but they're not as good as the arcade versions. Anywho.
Okay.
Sorry.
Cool?
Yes.
Merge, series which directly retold traditional European stories. Heidi, the show I mentioned at the start of this video, was one of the pioneering works in this field, and was part of a larger series called the World Masterpiece Theater. This was a Japanese TV show which would take a classic piece of literature and spend a year airing it.
Is
as
that
a
anime?
serialized
Oh
film.
my god, that
The
is
series
anime!
adapted everything
Another one, huh?
Well, the thing is, Moomins are from Finland.
Ah.
So, you know, and I'm pretty sure, like, as a kid, I believed Smurfs were made in Poland. So, I think they were changing the thing, because I can't remember having Japanese writing on the credits for Moomins. Moomins are massive in Poland. Like, seriously. Look at that. I have a little thing I got from Eric. You can't really see it, but never mind. Here, maybe I can lower down. Yeah, it's here. There's one guy. So, yeah, basically... yeah, like, come on, who doesn't know Buka? Like, obviously the names are gonna be different in English and in Polish. For some reason, I know they're shown, and apparently the thing in. Did I forgot to change the screen capture? Put the screen capture. I did forgot. So basically, Moomins are a big thing in Europe, especially, and Poland. I grew up on it. My sister doesn't like it; she finds them really creepy. And the part is that partially it is creepy. There's this monster I told you about. We call it Buka in Polish, and people my age are still slightly afraid of it. I'm still kind of slightly afraid of it. Although she wasn't never really a scary thing, but there was just, you know, it's a story of kids. I don't even, we really have to watch it. We should really make a reaction to it too, because it would be interesting. Because I know that they did English dub, and it was shown in UK, because I've seen someone saying that, and it was apparently really well done dubbing. They never really went to States for some reason, I don't know why. And recently someone posted, I've seen on Facebook, some little thing of picture of like, to me that was a Moomin, straight up, but it was black. The Moomins are white, yeah? But it was black, and someone just said that this is a little tiny obsidian hippopotamus. I'm like, that's a Moomin. I'm going to comment. The amount of comments saying that's a Moomin. I'm just finding it hilarious. That was just funny.
from the Moomin of Finland to the British classic of Peter Pan. And although it was not originally part of the series, Heidi was later usurped as part of the wider umbrella of the World Masterpiece Theater. In almost all these series, Europe is shown as a magical, idyllic land where adventures can take place, and children in particular are at liberty to discover themselves and the world around them. And if you're wondering why this was the case, critic Kobus van Staden summarizes it well. There are very few anime depictions
a whole
of
family.
contemporary Europe,
Yeah.
mostly Europe
And
is
they
treated as a
hibernate in
changeless
true winter?
Britannia, where the use of historically European detailing and landscapes designates the setting as beautifully past. What Van Staden is saying here is that for anime, Europe becomes an almost fantastical, fictional land, trapped in that era when cutesy little villages were tucked away in some lush green part of the world, away from the corruption of the modern industrial age and the evils that come with it. This also followed in the footsteps of classic European literature and the trend of Bildungsroman, which means coming-of-age stories, in the vein of what Charles Dickens wrote, where children confront
Jackie.
a cold adult
I don't know
world
what his name
and
is in
learn
English.
lessons
I
from
can't say it.
viewing or reading audiences valuable life lessons. On top of that, the European setting allowed filmmakers to tell a different kind of story, unlike the kinds currently being told to Japanese
I haven't even
audiences
seen
at the
years,
time
though.
in more action-oriented
really.
anime. Speaking on his time working on Heidi, Hayao Miyazaki wrote that we wanted to create a work for children that wasn't frivolous. We wanted to break away from the compromised and slapdash television animation shows of that time. In fact, this desire was so strong that it actually ended up taking the animation company that made Heidi, Zuyo Aizo, and ended up running it into the ground financially. Heidi's animators were so determined to make sure that there was lasting quality in every cell and every second of animation that they spent way more time making each episode than was the norm for the industry. Miyazaki refers to making Heidi in a year-long state of emergency and said that it was the lessons that he learned from making the show that pushed him away from television and towards films. It was only then that we came to understand the danger of television, he writes. Television repeatedly demands the same thing. Its voraciousness makes everything banal. We realized that television required our state of emergency to become a normal condition. The only way to have a long-term relationship with television is to lower the level of production quality to one that can be sustained. Though this was obviously tragic at the time, it's also something we can perhaps be grateful for now, because it's ultimately what leads to the creation of Studio Ghibli in 1985, founded by the legendary figures of Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata, who had worked together on the show Heidi. As should already be apparent by now, Miyazaki in particular had a great personal fascination with Europe and made several research trips across various parts of the continent, from Wales to Stockholm to several places in Germany. It is these varied influences that would eventually become the iconic Studio Ghibli style, which most of us can now recognize at just a glance and has influenced so many anime since. But unlike Heidi, where Switzerland was a relatively specific but rural utopia, in Ghibli films we start to see a change in emphasis. Miyazaki...
We're checking in, we're with the Heritage Tour.
I want to see that.
When's that starting?
January 8th.
Ah, next week. Huh?
Yeah.
Cool.
Definitely gonna go see that. I wanna see how they show that. How they show Poland. Yeah.
Yeah. He looks so much like his brother.
Your brothers.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna cut here and we're gonna be back in a second. Bye. Alright, we're back after the ads, so just go back because we actually don't have anything to add. If we had something to say, we would talk about that.
Yeah.
uses all these places that
I
he
did
has
like this
visited
one.
and taken
That's
pictures
really cool,
of
yeah.
and turns them into one beautiful amalgamation. For example, if we look at Kiki's Delivery Service, which is one of my favorite films of all time, we can see that the locations and architecture aren't particularly matched with any one European location. Instead, it's a mix of various European aesthetics, but also some fantastical and anachronistic elements, making it hard to
don't
place
think I ever heard
exactly
about that
where
one.
or what
I have. I just haven't
this
seen it.
film is supposed to be set in. The same can be said of Howl's Moving Castle, which on top of having magic, of course, also has things like gliders and various steam machinations, which have gone on to massively influence steampunk and basically create another subgenre where a vague hodgepodge Europe is often the setting. Critic Danny Cavallaro writes that this all comes from the Japanese concept of akogare no Paris, the Paris of our dreams, which refers to an elaborately fantasized Europe as seen through the Eastern eyes. This is actually quite funny because this idealization of Europe, pushed heavily by Miyazaki amongst others, has actually resulted in a specific phenomenon called Paris Syndrome, which is a term coined by a Japanese psychiatrist to refer to the cultural shock that tourists, particularly Japanese and other Asian tourists, feel when they turn up to Paris and realize that it's not at all as magical as they imagined it to be. And apparently, it can cause quite severe mental health problems. But going back to Ghibli films, we can see again the use of Europe as a fantastical, exotic setting which allows for new stories to be told. But there's also something new being done, which is that the idyllic European setting is often corrupted by the advancement of technology. Films like Howl's Moving Castle and the early Ghibli work Castle in the Sky are explicit warnings on the dangers of technology, and particularly militaristic technology. While both films start off with wholesome and idyllic settings, these are quickly destroyed and the peace ruined by people who use the fruits of human advancement for their own selfish gain. Both our main characters, Sophie and Pazu, respectively, have their lives turned upside down by these bad actors. These, of course, have strong parallels to Japan's own militaristic history. Going back to what we spoke about earlier, after the end of isolationism, once Sakoku ended, Japan rapidly rushed to both modernize its technology but also its empire, and taking a leap from its European influences, began to invade and conquer various parts of China and East Asia. Rather than necessarily set these films in Japan and make the message more blunt but also more antagonizing, one possible reason for setting anime in Europe is that it allows the social critique to be more generalized and also one that is more universal. And with so much of this militaristic behavior originating from the European powers, it made added sense to tell these stories in a European setting as well. This again is a major theme that continues in the steampunk genre, where the dangers of technology are often central to the story. And even outside steampunk, the European setting can still offer a great window into those same critiques. Full Metal Alchemist, which is often listed as one of the best anime of all time, touches on these very themes. It follows the story of two brothers.
No, I've played a game
Alphonse
though.
and
Hear
Edward
it,
Elric,
yeah.
obviously Germanic names, in the fictional country of Amestris, which is clearly meant to portray a militaristic Germany. In their world, alchemy is a science which allows alchemists to transform objects from one form to another, as long as they follow the law of equivalent exchange, which is that they must provide something of equal value to transmute an object like they do. The older brother, Edward, is recruited by the government to become a state alchemist, which he hopes will allow him to conduct research on returning him and his brother to their original bodies, which themselves were lost during the reckless pursuit of scientific advancement. But the government merely uses its alchemists as human weapons for militaristic expansion, and the brothers soon learn the dark world they've been dragged into. Disturbed by what they see, they began working on ending the current regime and to fix the wrongs they see in the world. As we get closer and closer to the modern day of anime, the reasons for the European settings become increasingly diverse, as we see in examples like this. But the influences of their origins are still also
Is
very
that his
clear.
brother?
I think so.
That makes it interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Nowadays, we live in an era where the world is much more globalized and easy to access. The absolute domination of the internet over our lives and the ability to travel across the world so much more freely has done a lot to demystify Europe to Japan and vice versa. So accordingly, representations of Europe have started to become even more common, though they still follow a lot of the same inspirations we've spoken about already. Let me break down some of the different kinds.
Wow.
We've seen the rise of anime like the Vinland Saga, which is a beautiful exploration of violence, slavery, and the evils of war. The anime is set mostly in England and Denmark, but is also an historical account of the real events of the Danish conquering of England. It features real characters like King Canute and Thorfinn, but takes creative liberties with the specifics of their stories. The show plays with all the various traditions we've just spoken about in this video. Much like Miyazaki's works, the European setting in the Vinland Saga allows for scathing critiques of armed conflict and dehumanization. But it also deviates in that it is very much concerned with the realism
show
of
is
where
this?
it is set. Europe
Yeah,
is
I
not
should've
a
known.
fantastical,
Kinda like
magical
missed the
land,
whole title.
but rather a brutal and unforgiving place where murder, war, and slavery are all commonplace. There are real-world events that the story has to incorporate and stay true to, so it doesn't play loose with those aspects. In this regard, it's much more like The Rose of Versailles. It's inspired in equal parts by real Norse folklore, but also just the author Makoto Yukimura's personal fascination with the culture. So overall, we can say a show like the Vinland Saga represents the
Vinland
Japanese
Saga.
desire to tell stories
never heard about it.
inspired
Gotta watch
by
this
the
one.
local tales of European cultures. More traditionally, we have anime like Attack on Titan, which although clearly not as wholesome as Ghibli films, is essentially following in the same tradition. It follows the same beats of the European setting being a mishmash of various European countries, with Germanic names like Eren Jaeger and the clear Nazi parallels, all the way to the Norse influences for the Titans. But a different reason for the European setting in modern anime is actually just the exoticism of Europe. In the popular anime One Piece, for example, we have an entire arc set in the fictional setting of Dressrosa, which is an island inspired by Spain and Spanish culture. The main villain of the arc, Don Flamingo, should tell you everything you need to know just by his name, which is inspired by the Spanish epic novel Don Quixote. There's even depictions of paella and flamenco dancing. But here, we still see the general mixing of European aesthetics, with an important part of the Dressrosa arc taking place in a Colosseum.
I was just thinking, like, where's the Colosseum fits in the Spanish thing, but then this is my European mind, I guess. It's Italian stuff. It's in Rome.
True, that's right.
Yeah. You didn't even think about it, did you?
No.
No, exactly. So, well, it was just an island, fictional stuff, so put this the best parts of Europe together. I mean, I will go and visit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Let's jump in back in.
Colosseum, which is of course Italian in origin.
There you go.
Sometimes it's no deeper than just Europe being a fun and exotic place to set an anime in. Finally, we have something which is actually relatively new in terms of reasons for European influence: video games. A vast number of anime are set in a European medieval world of adventures and quests, whether that be digital, like in Sword Art Online, or real, like they are in Frieren Beyond Journey's End. This one is fairly simple to explain, so I'll keep it short, in that the reason so many video games take place in this kind of setting is that they're all drawing inspiration from Dungeons & Dragons, which is the foundational point of role-playing games, particularly video games. If you want to see that topic covered actually, I have another video I made about it here, and you'll find a link in the video description. But it's not news that video games are very popular in Japan, and so it's only natural that with the action-adventure
Parallel World
RPG
Pharmacy?
genre being so heavily set in this kind of period and aesthetic, that many modern anime will also want to explore that kind of world. This is especially true in the isekai subgenre, which is a genre characterized by the fact that the main character is suddenly transported from the boring real world to a new, often literally magical world of knights and dragons, like in the show Jobless Reincarnation, which features a protagonist who lives in modern-day Japan as an incel-type loser and is deeply unsatisfied with his life. But one day when he ends up in an accident and thinks he's died, he actually ends up waking up in a magical European world full of adventures and monsters. And here, he's given a second chance at life. And as we've established, what better setting for a second chance in a magical place than the Europe that anime loves? So this has been a long video, and an even longer personal journey for me to investigate something that's been on my mind for a long time. Namely, why so many anime are set in Europe. Ultimately, the relationship is complex and has a long history and origin, which hopefully I've done my best to elaborate on, but obviously has far more steps along the way than I have the time to get into, or even the resources to investigate. On top of that, something I haven't mentioned yet is the commercialization of anime. Ever since anime started becoming TV products and potentially sold to European markets, its relationship with Europe became obviously more involved. It makes sense that if you're making an anime and you want it to have a more global appeal, that you might set it in Europe or borrow from European aesthetics to make the show more watchable to Western audiences. But how much we should read into that is a matter of heated debate between academics. Speaking of, I want to specifically shout out the academic article by Oscar Garcia Aranda and the mammoth book by Jonathan Clements called Anime History, both of which were amazing resources for research for this video, and I'll be providing all my references in the video description. In my mind, there's a fairly clear line running through the development of anime's relationship with Europe, starting with the general cultural fascination amongst Japanese people to then the use of Europe as a place for speaking on taboo topics in shoujo anime. From there it evolves to the exploration of European folktales and children's stories to the Ghibli model of a fantastical magical Europe, which also leads to the industrialized steampunk themes that offer a chance to make social critiques. Finally, we have the modern era where all these influences kind of mix, and we also get the addition of video games, which bring with them their own fascination with medieval Europe in particular, courtesy of Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this video because it has truly been a labor of love. And if you have, then please like and subscribe and share this video so that it can reach a wider audience. Also, if you'd like to support me directly, head on over to the Patreon link in the video description and you can earn yourself some benefits too, like your name in the end credits. I want to thank my current patrons, my community, and my editor Priscilla, without all of whom this would not be possible. Please check out the other videos in this channel, and if you have any topics you'd like me to cover, do drop them in the comment section below. That's it from me. Thank you for watching once again, and hope to see you very soon.
You have anything to add?
No, I think we covered it throughout the video.
Yeah. We talked a lot.
It's a long video.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you tomorrow. See you next week.
Nothing yet. Anime. Battle Angel.
Why you always do it after I say bye?
Sorry! Battle Angel Alita.
I said it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 2 parts animation. The movie's okay, but the animation's better. Watch in Japanese, not English.
I didn't watch the animation.
I gotta watch it. It's like an hour. Less than that.
Why don't I remember watching it? I thought we did.
It's also free on YouTube.
Okay, cool. Ah,
Yeah, right?
are you sure that's all?
That's it.
Okay, see ya. Bye.